Good morning, everyone. Can I have a thumbs up if you are hearing me? Okay, so I will do the introduction in this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed participants and honored guests, welcome to today's webinar on institutional strengthening for integrated water resource management. We are delighted to have you join us for this crucial discussion on enhancing the capacities and frameworks that underpin the sustainable management of water resources. Water is a vital resource that plays a vital role in sustaining life, supporting ecosystems, and driving economic development. However, the increasing demand for water, coupled with the challenges posed by different economic activities, climate change, population growth, urbanization, necessitates a comprehensive and integrated approach to water resource management. The objective of our webinar today is to shed light on the importance of institutional strengthening in the context of integrated water resource management. We will explore how strengthening institutions at various levels, from local to national and beyond, is essential for creating a robust foundation for effective and sustainable water governance. Throughout this session, we will delve into key aspects of institutional strengthening, including policy frameworks, capacity building, multi-stakeholder collaboration, technology and innovation, and also case studies. For the policy frameworks, examining the development and implementation of effective policies that promote integrated water resource management and facilitate coordination among various stakeholders is very important. Case studies showcasing successful examples of institutional strengthening for integrated water resource management from different regions, providing practical insights and lessons learned. We will have also here three speakers, and you will see the transboundary collaboration, also Suriname with French Guiana and Brazil. That's very important for us, and it's an example for a case study. Further, our speakers today bring a wealth of experience and knowledge to the field. We encourage active participation from all attendees. Ask your question in the chat box and please indicate for which speaker the question is, and insights will contribute to the richness of our discussion. In the end of all speakers, no, correction, at the end of one speaker, there is a possibility for answer the question, the sort Q&A session. And Mrs. Sabayo, Vanessa Sabayo, and Mrs. Yihel Casandirejo will assist us with all your questions. The speakers are Mr. Remy Boyer. Mr. Remy Boyer is Project Manager in Integrated Water Resource Management at the International Office of Water. He holds a master's degree in Water Resource Management and a master's degree in International Relations with International Office of Water. For water, he has been working in cooperation projects for integrated water resource management, institutional support for 10 years in Latin America, for example, in Ecuador, in Colombia, Peru, Brazil, Cuba, and also in Africa, in Senegal, in Madagascar, and Southeast Asia, in Laos, PGR, Myanmar, and Cambodia. He is now project coordinator of the Bioplateau Initiative in cooperation between Suriname, French Guiana, and Brazil. We have also as speaker Professor Dr. Christian Max Huisden. Professor Dr. Christian Max Huisden has 3 master's degrees and a doctorate between, between 1996 and 2009. He earned this from the University of Florida, and the location is Gainesville. His degree includes a Master of Science degree with research focused on reproductive theology and molecular biology, and Master of Agriculture degree. And the last one is a Master of Science in Pharmacy and a doctoral degree with research focused on nutraceuticals and pharmaceutical science. Professor Huisden also holds a professional doctorate in naturopathic medicine. During his professional career as scientist at the University of Florida, he was certified in forensic toxicology and forensic drug chemistry and served as manager and researcher of laboratories in environmental and human toxicology, nutraceuticals, and molecular biology. He is the author of a number of peer-reviewed publications and serves as a peer reviewer of Ambio and Springer Link. His work can be found in scientific databases. Professor Dr. Huisden currently serves as department chairman and head of laboratories and the Department of Environmental Science, and is also board member of the College of Science and Technology at the Anton de Kom University of Suriname. Further on, he is also board member of Waterforum Suriname and the Vereniging Surinaamse Technologen. Professor Huisden is currently also participating in 2 governmental steering committees: a presidential steering committee on integrated water resource management, reporting to the president, and the second one is water platform of the Ministry of Natural Resources, reporting to the Minister of Natural Resources. We have also Mrs. Femia Wezenhagen as a speaker. Based on her specialty as a spatial planner with 25 plus years of experience in this profession, both locally and internationally, Mrs. Wezenhagen has always worked to promote sustainable spatial planning and environmental policies. She trained in architecture and landscape architecture in the US at the University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida, where she obtained a master degree in landscape architecture. After, after completing her studies in the US in 1996, she worked in several countries in the region between 2000 and 2011. For example, for international companies such as the Interplan Group, Royal Haskoning, Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago, also at Genifar, Trinidad and Tobago, as well as especially in the countries in the Caribbean such as Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Grenada, and also Costa Rica. Based on her work and especially involvement in spatial planning, she has continued to develop in land use and urban planning. In 2011, she decided to return to Suriname, where she was involved, among other things in founding SPASU, Spatial Planners Association Suriname. When the Ministry of Spatial Planning and the Environment was established, she was asked to help set up and manage the Spatial Planning Directorate at the ministry. And I want you to know that for this webinar, we have chosen the modality of pre-recording the presentations due to internet connection stability. And I hope this will work very good with us. And also thank you once again for being a part of this important conversation and discussion. Together, let us explore this possibility, this medium for institutional strengthening that will pave the way for sustainable and equitable integrated water resource management. I want to thank you all once again. Have a successful webinar. And I will next speaker the Minister of Spatial Planning and Environment will have a welcome word with you in this webinar. Thank you once again.
Dames en heren, goedemorgen en welkom bij onze IWRM-webinar. Suriname is gezegend met heel veel rivieren en vaker denken wij dat wij voldoende waterbronnen beschikken. Maar in de afgelopen periode hebben wij gemerkt hoe klimaatverandering impact heeft gehad op ons water. Veel minder water is beschikbaar in het Afubakka-stuwmeer, waardoor dat de energievoorziening beïnvloedt. De economische activiteiten hebben vooral ook heel veel invloed op ons water in de kanalen en in de rivieren. Hoe gaan we daarmee om? Deze webinar is bedoeld om u een mogelijkheid te bieden om kennis en ervaring met elkaar te delen en u tools aan te bieden om uw bijdrage te leveren aan een beter geïntegreerd waterbeheer. Heel veel succes!
We will go straight on, and our first speaker will be Mrs. Femia Wiesenhagen.
Good afternoon. My name is Femia Weeshagen. I am a spatial planner. I am the advisory to the Ministry of Spatial Planning and Environment, and I will be talking today about integrated planning, integrated spatial planning and stormwater management. The table of content, I will be talking about the definition of spatial planning. I think that is very important because to understand what the role is of spatial planning and stormwater management, it is important to understand what spatial planning is. Sustainable cities and communities, this is the UN Habitat Program, the UN Habitat Focus, an historic overview of spatial planning, and then I will be talking about what is the circumstances in Suriname, why are we flooding in Suriname, vision on spatial planning, and other definition of spatial planning. This is very important. The coordination of practices and policies affecting spatial organization of an area, land, or region. What does this mean? This means spatial planning is an holistic exercise whereby the organization of space, in this case land that is being occupied, around the functionality of the space. That means that what is the space is going to be used of? Is it going to be used for human activity? Is it going to be saved as forest? Is it going to be used for other activities like agriculture, etc.? In other words, it is the activities that are surrounding the functionality of the space, the human activity through sustainable planning of livable spaces where a healthy balance exists between the human activities and the protection of the natural environment. In other words, in spatial planning, we are trying to find a balance between what is human activities, what are the ambitions of human activities. Is it to live in the area, to work in the area, to use the land as agricultural land for mining, whatever. But in all of this, to find a balance with the protection, the upkeep, the management of our natural environment. Within the UN Habitat, within this, I will talk about the SDGs first. Within SDG 11, we have sustainable cities and communities. whereby it talks about spatial planning. But in our experience, when you think about spatial planning, like I said before, it is a holistic exercise whereby at least SDG 6 till SDG 15 cover spatial planning. Have to do with spatial planning, have to do with making us an area resilient, making an area sustainable, guaranteeing sound spatial planning, guaranteeing that people can live forward and live onward. But within the UN Habitat goals for cities and communities, they promote sustainable development. They achieve integrated planning, integrated plans with budgets, plan with partners and stakeholders, meet subsidiary principles, promote market responsiveness, ensure access to land, develop appropriate planning tools, be pro-poor and inclusive, recognize cultural diversity. What do these goals mean? In other words, when you plan for an area for human development, you have to look at how you're going to plan it. This is the holistic part of spatial planning. This is where you look at the sustainable development of the area, where you have to achieve an integrated planning system. In other words, people are not only going to live in an area, they're not going to build houses, and then that is it. You need roads, you need channels, you need water, you need drinking water, you need energy, you need electricity, you need recreational areas, you need sport areas where people can sport, you need areas where children can go to school, you need areas where people can work, where you have commercial activities, but also where you have industrial activities. This is what it means to be integrated. Within these areas, you also have to look at the budgets. You have to plan with partners. You have to be with stakeholders. You have to meet the principles of what is it that you want to plan. You have to promote your ideas. You have to ensure access of land, which is very important. You have to develop appropriate planning tools. You have to be pro-poor. In other words, you have to look at ways for people to employ. You have to be able to employ people. You have to be inclusive. You have to recognize cultural diversity. This is very important, especially in Suriname, where we have different types of culture, where we have different types of land areas, where land is different, is being occupied and being used in a different way. You have to recognize this type of cultural diversity. Like I said before, the UN Habitat Planning Agenda is to promote planning and design as means to reconcile the integrated spatial, social, economic, cultural, and environmental concerns. So what I just talked about just now has to do with this. What does this also mean? This means that when we look at planning, urban planning, and we look at governance, and we look at management, we have to be able to do this in a sustainable, but also it has to be in a sustainable way so that services for an urban planning and infrastructure, but also the natural environment can exist simultaneously without one being overdeveloped or without one disturbing the other. And usually when people are planning, especially with housing, affordable housing and planning land, it is always the activities, the human activities that disturb the environmental activities. So that is what we have to stop. An historic overview, I'm going to go over this really fast because it starts with between the 17th and 19th century, we had agricultural. Suriname was mostly an agricultural country, the development of plantations, and I will tell you later in terms of the water why this is important. The second half of the 20th century, this is when the bauxite period started between the 1920s and 1960s. After the 1960s, we had the bauxite industry, we had the development of the Afabaka Dam, we had the establishment of the district of Rukapondo, you had the introduction of the Kabalebo project, development of Apura in the west, You had further expansion of Paramaribo, very important, the development of areas like Zorgenhoop, Uitvlicht, Maratrate, Rainfield, Blauwgrond, etc. You had new agricultural developments, rice, banana, in Nikeri, Wageningen, you had the rice sector, and Saramacca, you had Surland. And then in the second half of the 20th century, you had also the development of oil, which is the last part of the 20th century. In the 1980s, this is when oil was discovered in Suriname. It added, but then at the end of the 21st century, we lost our bauxite industry. Suralco, the Alcoa, and the Billiton left Suriname, and the development of oil started to take, of gold started to take precedence. Oil and gold started to become precedence, whereby gold, big companies like Roosevelt Gold Mines and Newmont and Suriname Gold, Surgold companies started coming about. What does it mean for our development? This means that our policy hierarchy, which was developed in between the 1960s and the 1970s, was outdated. Planning authorities like the Planning Commission and the Planning Council were never instated. The structure and zoning plans that were supposed to be mandated by the Urban Planning Act. We had an Urban Planning Act developed in the 1970s, 1972, 1973. We had the Planning Act, were never made. In other words, people could just come and get land without having structure and zoning plans. There was nowhere government would just give out land for land that was required or was zoned as agricultural land, were used for livable spaces, for to develop communities, to develop built environments. What happened in this is that these communities stayed the way they were as the plantations were developed. The plantations were developed as a with land as plantations. A part was used as livable spaces, and the larger part was used for agriculture. What happened was that the back part of the land was never developed properly, so that gave you roads were developed along where these plantations, where these buildings were created, which came up with inadequate consultation. There was no information that was shared from the government to the people. All the things that right now make the area of Suriname look very chaotic as we see it right now. Now, what are the opportunities for new running processes? What we're looking at when we look at Suriname, like I said, we have a very informal, very new way of looking at our planning system. We have different cultures. When you look at the planning system, and we can look at it in like regions, regional, from urban to suburban to rural areas, and address. It helps us to look at an area of land not as a district with set boundaries, but you could have an area regionally where people live in a certain way, where you have, for instance, agricultural development, but you also have rural, the backlands, the back rural lands, the hinterlands where people live in village, as in tribal and communities. And you have the contrast between urban, what we call urban, and these agricultural or rural areas. You can actually really see that, and we have to work with that, which is what I mean with work with informality. And important, addressing climate change. We all know that Suriname is one of the countries that is at risk due to climate change, sea level rising. You see it, you feel our climate. We have very hot weathers during dry season, and we have very our rainy seasons have now become seasons where a lot of rain falls in a short period of time. So you can really feel climate change in Suriname. Addressing safety and security, that is much important, especially if you want to adapt to climate change. You have to look at how well we protect ourselves, how well we look at security and safety, how well we prevent from a disaster from making us immobile or inadequate. And of course, the last one is encourage innovation. We have to encourage technology and innovation. We have to look at new ways of adapting to what is coming towards us. The way forward is that right now the Ministry of Spatial Planning and Environment is looking at, like I said, we're looking at this spatial planning holistically. That means that we're also looking at the environment, but we're also looking at stormwater management. We're looking at how are we going to look at creating land, designing land, looking at land in a way so that people can live safely and adapt to whatever is coming towards them. So that we can protect our forests, which is very important. We want to protect our forests, but at the same time, we can develop land in such a way that everybody can live peacefully, safely, and securely within the government, within this country. The ministry has taken upon itself to rectify the Environmental Act for this, and we have designed the Spatial Planning Act, whereby the Spatial Planning Act will lead as a guide towards making structure and zoning plans. We have a draft vision of the spatial planning development vision of how we want to develop our country. We also have structural vision for the districts. Our vision on spatial planning in Suriname, the purpose is to establish future ambition and intentions in order to achieve sustainable spatial development. We have a starting point for this, which means that we have a balance. Our starting point is to create a balance between the social and the economic development of an area on the one hand and the ecological development on the other. In other words, like I said before, you have to be able to develop as a human being sustainably in balance with keeping, managing, and protecting our ecological, our biodiversity, our forests, our natural environment, which means that we're looking at people, profit, prosperity, planet, which is sustainability. This means that we have to guarantee responsible management. Responsible management means to guarantee continuity, which means that people who will come after us, or the next generations that come after us, will be able to enjoy what we left behind. We'll be able to enjoy our forests. We'll be able to enjoy all the things that we are developing right now, so that they don't have to suffer from our ambitions. To the goals of land management systems, when you talk about layers, this is it is how we used to do it. Like in the past, we used to come and we used to have a piece of land, and you just develop the piece of land and slide with the black parts, the black dots. These are areas that we look at that are being looked at and how they fit in the total area. And then you have the master plan. You have a plan of the whole area, like how is the area going to look in 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now with the development that you want to introduce. Then you look at the land use development plans. How has the area been developed before? What type of human activity has taken place within the area? And of course, most important, green or will become green, so that the area that you choose to become green will become parks, it will become recreational or natural protected areas. And then the last one will be your building planning and design, which is where you're gonna place your building, how high are you gonna what type of building development. Will it be apartments? Will it be housing? Will it be offices? How high will your buildings be? Because on depending on the type of soils, of course, you're gonna look at the building planning, as you can go up to 8, or you can go up to 20 floors. Now, within the planning process, there are steps that we have to take. These steps start with launching your spatial planning process. So once you have gone through all the layers, you're now gonna go and launch your spatial planning process. That means that you're gonna have what they call engagement, stakeholder engagement. You're gonna meet with different stakeholders on different levels. You can have stakeholder meetings with the clients only, or you can have stakeholder engagement level where you go house to house and meet with people, or you can have them in a group stakeholder engagements, like you have business people and you have policymakers, and you have on different contexts. So then step 2 is when you describe the present conditions. You tell people, this is what the area looks like now. This is what we want to do to the area. This is step 2. And then you check what the stakeholders, what their ideas are, where they want to see change, where they agree with your designs, and where they want to go from where they are now to into the future, where they want to go or where they want to be. And this is a very collective decision-making process, because you have, like, if you look at the steps, you will be collecting what we call multi-resolution data on social and ecological system, which means you will have several data that is being collected on the social system. And in this data, you will have the administrative, you will have the ecological, and you will have the social, and that will give you, in the end, a spatial distribution model. Step 3 is you analyze the present condition, which means that you go and you take pictures, you look at what it's like, you look at where you think changes can be brought in, you look at what is the present condition, why is it not good the way it is, what is good the way it is, and what is not good the way it is, what needs change. And then step 4 is you explore future conditions, which these future conditions are what you have taken out of the stakeholder meetings, where the stakeholders have told you what the changes are that they want to make, how they want to make it. You start making designs. And step 5 is implementing, monitoring, and adapting. And even this part you do with the stakeholders. So the whole cycle is a stakeholder cycle. In terms of stormwater management, we start with a hydrological cycle. I'm going to be very short why stormwater management and spatial planning are 2 parts of a pie. Because stormwater management, as it is shown with the hydrological cycle, as we know, is that we have clouds, and the clouds form mist or rain, and the water from the rain goes towards a drainage system, and from the drainage system it goes through our rivers and our seas, and then it gets it gets taken up again by the air, and you have a hydrological cycle. Well, you can see it in it's kind of hard for me to think in English right now. But actually, the actual hydrological cycle, when looking at climate change, looks different. Because in the actual hydrological cycle, you have water that is being polluted due to oil, due to fish, due to urban development, due to human activity. This water goes towards the fish who drink this water, or who have to live in these seas and who have to live in these areas, goes towards our air, because the molecules, the polluted molecules that are in the water, are taken up also by these clouds, and then it rains again, and we have what is called sour rain, and our land areas are being polluted, our seas are being polluted, our air is being polluted. So this is the reality of climate change. So that we have what they call carbon dioxide, or a high level of carbon dioxide that is being released, and other pollutants that is being released in the air, so that the climate change is being drastically changed. Our climate is drastically changed due to these activities that are taking place. So what we are looking at in stormwater management, when it comes to stormwater management and spatial planning, I am now showing you that right now, for instance, in the Netherlands, they are looking at it as a holistic idea, whereby as an early attempt, they try to analyze land and land areas and water, and look at future developments that can take place, and how much more water due to future development, and how much pollution, and how we look at the development of land and stormwater management systems that will prevent pollutants, but also prevent flooding from flooding. And in the Netherlands, since 1953, they have developed flood protection areas, which are areas that they look at through land use planning, that they will allow to flood, and areas that need to be protected from flooding areas. And this system is a very important system that is right now being used and looked at also in the Ministry of Spatial Planning and Environment, so that we can make our structural and zoning plans and see how we are looking at areas in coastal zone, for instance, that we want to what we call high risk areas that we want to leave, so that these areas can become flooded, so that areas that need to be protected, like areas within Paramaribo and Wanica, and spaces where what we call high investment areas, can be protected, so that these areas can be flooded. And the second part is that we also look at how we're going to protect our hinterland, our forests, from human activities like mining, through stormwater management, by using stormwater management systems, whereby mines now are being what we call closed off, and stormwater management systems are being developed, and we have now developed land use management standards for mining, so that people who are mining gold or bauxite or anything in the interior now have to follow these standards, so that they can prevent pollutants to pollute our rivers, our existing water areas, and therefore pollute our land and pollute our forest and kill our forest. I think that is, I've talked a lot, and I would like to thank you.
Camera. Good afternoon or good morning. My name is Vanessa Sabayo, and I will be your facilitator regarding the Q&A. If you have a question, there is a Q&A section, and you can drop your question there, and we can address it. We will address it. The first 5 questions will be addressed, but the other questions, we will take it, and we will also send the answers to you all. We already have a question for Mrs. Wiesenhagen from Mrs. Joy Theeman. I will read it to you. Can you elaborate a bit on strategic long-term planning, especially strategic environmental assessment? Do we have any such studies already done, or are there any in progress? And may we know the status? Can any early conclusions be shared?
Answer this. Before I answer this question, I want to first thank the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, ACTO, on behalf of the Ministry of Spatial Planning and Environment for the possibility to hold this webinar. Oh, it's okay. Okay. I will answer the question that Ms. Joy Tayman asked now. The Ministry of Spatial Planning and Environment has indeed done strategic environmental assessments. We have done several, we're now doing several studies, especially on spatial planning. I'm going to talk about spatial planning mostly, whereby we have, like I said before, we have now created the structure vision of the districts. We are now in the process of creating the structure vision of the districts. For Suriname, we are now in the process actually of presenting the Spatial Planning Act, which should go to the National Congress, National Assembly of Suriname by the end, I think by the end of March. We have had rigorous stakeholder consultations with different district and district communities, district commissioners, with even the indigenous people from the different villages and different areas, regions. So we have had, since we started in 2020, and I think now in 2024, I'm 2 years back, 2024, we are able to present land use strategic land use standards and guidelines for how we as a people are supposed to look at land and the development of land. We have also finished that studies. Besides that, the ministry itself, and I think I'm speaking a little bit on the environmental part, is also doing assessments of our forests, what type of forestry activities are taking place. We are also in the process of setting up, together with NIMAS, a geospatial intelligence hub, which means that we are collecting data for Suriname, all the data, spatial data, geographical data, environmental data, that we are going to place in a central hub, which will be accessible to all. These are of environmental. We also have now all these type of developments are taking place right now within the ministry.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Wezenhagen. Mrs. Tayman also has another question here. Actually, it's an extension of the first question on the subject of strategic long-term planning, especially strategic environmental assessment. A, do we have any such studies already done in Suriname? B, do they cover every single districts of our country? Or C, are there any in progress? D, if so, may we know the status of those in progress? And E, can any early conclusions be shared? Finally, by when is a SEA planned for our offshore waters? Thank you.
Thank you.
Last, can you repeat?
Can you repeat the
Can
question?
you repeat the last part? It's a long question, so I can't read it from here. Please.
Yes, on the subject
Oh,
of
say yeah, social and environmental. Um, Let me start by saying yes, we are now in the progress, like I said before, of developing what we call a structure vision. What is a structure vision? A structure vision is a development vision for each district. Before we can go and develop structure and zoning plans for districts, we have to develop structure visions. I don't have my computer here with me, so I would show you what what we're talking about. But anyway, it is about looking at at each district on district level, but also on a regional level. That's a different aspect. You see, when you look at the district on district level, it's not always what you intend to get. We have 10 districts whereby you have 9 districts in the coast and one huge district, district Sipaliwini in the hinterland. The problem is that you get management and planning processes cannot be developed properly in these districts. So we have to look at development in Suriname on 2 levels, which means that we're looking at the districts as the policy areas, and we're looking at the country, the whole country as a region, and developing this in several regions of development, whereby we're looking at where is urban development taking place, where is suburban development taking place, where is agricultural development taking place, where is mining taking place. So we're looking at it in different regional areas. Which areas do we want to protect? Which areas do we leave for development, etc., etc. I am not an environmental planner. I am a spatial planner. Of course, as the Ministry of Spatial Planning, I can only answer for you that we are now doing, like I said before, we are now doing the structural plans for each of the districts. For right now, it is in progress. We have done the structure plans or the draft structure plans for 7 districts, which is the Para, Nikeri, Kamawena, Marawena, Brokopondo, Wanika, Koroni. We're still in process of doing Paramaribo and Sipaliwini. So it's actually eight districts we have finished, and we're still in progress of Paramaribo and Sipaliwini. We left those for last because you have the smallest district with the most population and the biggest districts with the least population, and each of them have present their own problems. In terms of, I don't understand the last question. When is SIA planned for our offshore waters? I don't understand what that has anything to do with. We are doing right now, social environmental, is that it? Assessments. When are those planned for our offshore waters? I don't think I can answer that question because that is not in my area of expertise. I think that has to be answered by somebody who's in the environmental department. So I'm sorry, I cannot answer that. How is the monitor of the aquifers in the Sandaray Formation on heavy metal and waste of gold mining? How is it with the monitoring of aquifers in the Sandaray Formation on heavy metal and waste of gold mining? I cannot answer that question either. I'm doing spatial planning. I'm looking at spatial planning. I cannot answer on aquifers in Sandaray Formation on heavy metals and waste of gold mining. The only thing I can tell you is that the environmental department will have to answer that question, or maybe one of my speakers that comes after me will be able to answer this question.
Thank you, Mrs. Suisana. The questions regarding the Sanare formation and the SEA, we will take it and we will you will get a response when we send all the materials to you. Thank you. Um, are there any questions for Mrs. Wiesenhagen? Because up to now only Mrs. Steeman and Yenny uh, have sent questions for Mrs. Wiesenhagen. I will read. The questions can also be on put in the in Dutch, and we also can translate it on for our international guests. If no other further questions addressed for Mrs. Wiesenhagen, then I would like to thank Mrs. Wiesenhagen, and we will um, go to our next presenter. And our next presenter is Professor Max Heusden. Thank you.
In the world of today, water is extremely important, not only for life in general, but it's a scarce commodity, and sweet water especially is becoming a commodity that is very scarce. So within this context, about 97% of all water on Earth consists in the form of salt water. About only 3% of water is in the form of sweet clean water that can be used readily, that could be used readily. Because of this 3%, a lot of is in the form of ice, and either underneath the ground and in the aquifers, or in bodies of water such as rivers, lakes, and etc. etc. So within this context, a lot of countries on Earth have a problem accessing sweet, clean water. And Suriname is one of the very few countries that has a lot of copious amounts of sweet water readily available. But within the context of climate change, it's becoming a more and more bigger challenge, not only for us as a country, but for the region. So within this context, we are advocating integrated water resource management. Within the context of climate change, we see that sea level rise is one of the problems. Sea level rise causes salt intrusion. Suriname has a very low-lying coastal area where most of its population lives, and this becomes a threat. Sea level rise is not the only problem within the context of climate change, but also extreme weather events where copious amounts of water will come down in the form of rainfall, heavy rainfall within a short time notice, within a short time frame, and this causes flooding. And Suriname has been challenged in this perspective, not only, but also drought is an issue. We see that more and more extended periods of drought become a problem. So integrated water resource management is a must. This water can be used for several activities. I'm thinking agriculture, irrigation water, but I'm also thinking, for example, clean drinking water for all people. I'm thinking water that is necessary for other activities such as industrial activities. And the context of Suriname is such at the moment that we have copious amounts of water readily available at the surface, but also in the aquifers. We need to distinguish between two different types of aquifers. The ones that are rechargeable, those will be able to add water through different means, and the ones that are non-rechargeable, which are closed, confined. And both of these types of aquifers give access to a quality type of water. But the challenge is that within the context of industrial activities, they also are vulnerable to chemical pollution. So industrial activities can be categorized in, for example, agricultural activities, where a number of different types of chemicals are being used either as pesticides or as herbicides, where they can infiltrate these bodies of water and cause contamination and quality degradation. So other types of activities that can become a challenge readily are, for example, within the gold mining industry. We in Suriname know two types of gold mining. The large scale, where mostly cyanide is being used, and we know the small scale gold mining, where we see that more and more people use mercury. Both cyanide and mercury are being a problem within the environment, and they cause a threat to the quality of the water. So cyanide is an acute toxic substance, while mercury is a more chronic type, but it's nevertheless it's very important to be regulated. Mercury is not only a neurotoxin, but it's also a teratogen. So it causes neurological damage, but it also goes to the next generations. So where it causes cognitive developmental problems in the children of people that have been exposed to mercury. And yeah, so we are being confronted with a number of problems related to water being available at the right moment and maintaining the quality of the water as we know it. So within the context of Suriname, we are trying to give it an approach where integrated type of management is being introduced. This integration needs to happen at different fronts, and these fronts can be separated in, for example, at a governmental level, but also at the industrial level, also at an environmental level, and also at for example, an agricultural level. So one of the biggest users of clean water in Suriname is the rice industry. And within this context, it's important that we not only not only provide water in such a manner that it's readily available when necessary, but we also keep an eye on the quality of the water. Industrial activities in general cause a threat to the quality of water. So within this context, especially oil and gas is currently one of the items that we monitor closely. Oil and gas will take off in the next few years in Suriname, and it's mostly offshore activities, where the coastal line, the estuarine zone, not only, but also the marine life within the ocean and the coastal area of Suriname is being threatened. And from our perspective, it's very important to generate data at the scientific level. So scientific research is extremely important to allow not only to monitor several parameters, but also to be able to provide the necessary data for the government to do evidence-based management, evidence-based governmental arrangements. So within this context, the university plays an important role, because at the university we have a teaching chair, an academic chair, where we are focused mainly on water quality, but also environmental parameters that can be used to not only establish a baseline at chemical, biochemical, and genetic parameters, but also we are focused on providing data for evidence-based management. So within this context, I need to mention that we have an certified laboratory that is basically the basis for providing this data. but we also have a scientific staff, and we have academic programs that can help in doing so. Capacity building is one of the important aspects when it comes to data gathering and when it comes to scientific research. So, in order to assist the academic chair, we have several foundations in place. From within the academic chair, we have one foundation that focuses mostly on agriculture activities. This foundation is named COCO Natural. It stands for Collaborative Cooperation Naturally. The second one is focused mainly on non-timber forest products, how they can be used for sustainable development. I'm thinking, for example, about the production and the development of naturopathic medicine from the forest. And the third foundation, so this second foundation's name is WINHI. It stands for Wellness Integrative Natural Health Institutes. And the third one is named SAFE. SAFE stands for Suriname Alliance for the Environment. And SAFE is actually a partnering with local and international organizations that have focus on the protection of the environment and for the rehabilitation of certain areas, of certain parameters that are being threatened with degradation and cause environmental health issues. So from this perspective, these foundations work closely together with local and international partners. So within this context, we also see that at the governmental level, there are different layers in place. Water Forum Suriname, for example, has done some research in the past few years and has given advice to several ministries. And currently, we have Water Platform. Water Platform is a group of individuals that are representing governmental agencies, industry, and NGOs. And from within this group of individuals, Water Platform is advising the Ministry of Natural Resources regarding the quality of water and regarding an integrated water resource management approach. We also try to bring this at the governmental level, where different ministries will be involved. Several ministries are important within this context. I'm calling a few. For example, the Ministry of ROM, which is the Ministry of Environment and Spatial Planning. I'm calling the Ministry of LFA, which is the Ministry of Fisheries, Animal Husbandry and Agriculture. I'm naming the Ministry of Health, which is of course very important, where we establish quality type baselines for drinking water and human health. I'm naming the Ministry of Natural Resources, which is of course focused on the water, where it's coming from, the different sources and its use. And I'm also naming, for example, the Ministry of Openbare Werken, which is the ministry that looks at infrastructure, often such as infrastructure that is supposed to regulate water flow and prevent flooding, etc. So there are different types of activities, not only, but also different types of stakeholders and different types of governmental institutions and agencies that need to be involved, included, if you want to talk about integrative water management.
Thank you, Professor Hersden. Now you can ask Professor Hersden your question. You can put it in the Q&A section. Yes, now we can see Professor Hurston. Are there any questions for Professor Hurston? Please put it in the Q&A section. I will wait a few seconds. If not, then we will go further. We will proceed. Professor Hurston, maybe you have a comment. Oh, I see a question from Mrs. Joy Tayman. How is it going, Professor Hurston, with motivating young people to stay in Suriname and investing in themselves in these fields of expertise? Keen to hear from your thoughts.
Yes, good morning all. Thank you for your question. Well, it is a challenge. It's an ongoing challenge because of the economical situation in the country and because of the activities that are taking place not only locally but internationally. So a lot of our young people or experts are being drawn to jobs maybe outside of the country because of economical benefits, but it is important to say that important few remain in Suriname and are available for further studies. So at the university, we have an accredited program in environmental science. We exist for over 25 years, almost 30 years now, and our main focus is to do to deliver environmental experts not only to Suriname but also to the region. And we succeed in doing so. It is a challenge to keep people focused and provide the necessary education, but we do so at different levels and we are making progress. As I mentioned, our programs are accredited. We currently have orientations in environmental management and environmental technology, and working currently on adding orientation in especially water, where integrated water resource management is going to be a key focus. As most of you know, a few months back from Water Forum Suriname, in collaboration with the University Environmental Sciences, we rolled out a program to actually build capacity in this respect, and it was very successful. We had about 500 Surinamese people that participated, and we were able to provide certificates to almost 200 of them. So we are making some progress in capacity building in this respect. I need to also tell you that the laboratory that I mentioned earlier is focusing on graduate programs. These graduate programs, such as master's and PhD programs, will be research focused. So each individual candidate will have a project proposal, and the coursework will be tailored to meet the requirements. So to answer your question, we are making some progress, but it remains a challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hurston. We also have another question from Mr. Remy Boyer. Thank you, M. Hurston, for your interesting presentation. What do you think about legal framework for developing integrated water research management in Suriname?
Yeah, the legal framework is actually in the making, and there are, like I mentioned in the presentation, there are already four concept laws, and these need to be addressed by Parliament. They are currently in process at the Ministry of Natural Resources. They have been there for quite some time already, but we are making an effort to emphasize the importance of these, that they go to Parliament where they can be discussed, adjusted, and then implemented.
Thank you, Professor Hersden. I hope Mr. Boyer is satisfied with that answer. I don't see any questions more for Professor Hersden, and I think we can proceed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hersden. We will now introduce Mr. Remy Boyer. He's our third presenter, and